When the Steam Deck was first announced, one of the things that I was pretty apprehensive about was the fact that it was going to be running SteamOS. Not that I didn't like SteamOS, I hadn't ever used it before, but it is a Linux operating system, and I don't know a whole lot about Linux. I have been a Windows user for years and years and years, and I have been a Mac user. I used Unix a little bit when I was in the Army, but not enough to remember anything about, really. So the idea that I was going to be playing games on Linux made me apprehensive. That said, once I got it in my hands and I realized the vast majority of the games that I am playing are going to run just fine on SteamOS because of Proton, you know what? It turns out that I was wrong, and it was actually pretty damn good. And the last 3 years, I think at this point now, the last 3 years that I've had a Steam Deck, man, I have had so many great experiences. And the times where Linux has been an issue have been relatively small, way smaller than I thought that they would be. Which brings us to today. You see, SteamOS is about to launch on other hardware. And in addition to SteamOS launching on other hardware, Valve launched a new verification system, essentially, which will tell you whether or not a game is SteamOS compatible. I have a video about this. I will link down below if you want to check out that video. But essentially, because we are now going to be able to run SteamOS on a bunch of different hardware, Valve wants to make sure that they can communicate to the end user whether or not games are going to run on their operating system of choice. Will it run on, essentially, Linux? And if it does, then it will be SteamOS compatible. Well, Doom: The Dark Ages, which just came out, and I have been playing and I've been having a lot of fun with, and full disclosure, I did get my copy of the game for free, and I will be talking about my experience with it on the next episode of the podcast. But Doom: The Dark Ages apparently uses Denuvo, and there's a lot of games that use Denuvo. But here's the thing. When you are trying to play games on SteamOS using Proton as a compatibility layer, essentially what's happening is you are using a certain set of API calls. The game is expecting to get this certain Windows API call, and Proton says, well, here, use this Linux one instead, and then you can launch the game, and it works really, really well. And a lot of times when you are trying to play a game and there's issues, well, what people do is they will switch versions of Proton. There's a ton of different versions of Proton out there. There's the Proton that, Valve has as like their reference model, basically the one that they are shipping with most things. But then you have a bunch of older versions and newer versions. You even have third-party versions like GE Proton. So when somebody runs into an issue, one thing that they will usually be suggested to them, why don't you try a different version of Proton? Okay, so what does that mean? Well, you go into the cogwheel and then you say, well, I want to go into my compatibility, and I'm going to say use this version of Proton. For simplicity's sake, we'll say Proton version 9. Oh, that's not working the way that I want. Okay, I'm going to switch over to Proton version 10 or Proton version 8 or whatever it happens to be. Maybe it's GE Proton. Here is where the problem rears its ugly head. And that problem is Denuvo, as always, because it's literally garbage software that is stopping paying customers from enjoying the thing that they paid for. But basically what happens is Denuvo sees you trying all of these different Proton layers, and it's counting each one of those Proton layers as an installation on a computer. And basically you have up to 5 installations before it's like, okay, this guy is clearly up to no good. Let's lock him out of the game that he paid for. All right, so they lock you out of the game that you paid for, and that happened to DevilGuard, who posted this over on the Linux gaming subreddit. They said, I'm livid. I pre-ordered the game to play early. I was having some FSR issues, basically a black screen when FSR foreground is activated despite message JIT compiled this morning. I don't know what that means. So I decided to test out different Protons. They did Proton EXP. They did GE, Proton EXP. Again, launcher picked that one as multiple activations and then locked me out. So now I won't be able to play the game for 24 hours. Essentially what's happening here is every time you switch versions of Proton, it's counting as installing on another machine, and therefore it is saying, well, you're clearly up to no good. This is the same kind of thing that we've seen multiple times on services like GeForce Now, although GeForce Now usually tends to be able to figure out how to get around this because they're partnering directly with the publishers in this case. But with GeForce Now, you log in to their servers and then you play your game on their systems and then you stream the video to you. But every time that you log into a different system. You're not always going to get the same one. Maybe somebody is using the one that you used last time. So you log in and it counts that as an install. And then boom, you get hit with a de novo lockout for 24 hours. So now you can't play the game that you paid money for. You know who doesn't get affected by this? I'm going to tell you who doesn't get affected by this. The people who are pirating the game. The whole point of de novo DRM is to make it so that people who are pirating the game can't play the game. That's the whole point of having digital rights management, is to make sure that the people who are paid for the game can play the game and nobody else can. But it never friggin' works. It never works. You always end up punishing the paying customers whenever you have DRM. And listen, I understand that Valve's Steam is literally DRM, but it's reliable. Guess what? We don't need a second DRM on top of the DRM that we already have. Now, I don't know off the top of my head. I'm going to check it right now. I wonder if this game is available on Good Old Games, which is completely DRM free. So I'm going to go over there and I'm going to search for Doom: The Dark Ages. And it looks like it is not currently available on GOG. It says no results found. Hopefully I didn't spell something wrong. But you can get the other Doom games on there, and those would be DRM free, so you wouldn't have to worry about de novo. Well, Valve does warn people when you buy the game that, hey, this has third-party DRM. But the fact that Valve is about to launch SteamOS on a bunch of different systems, if it gains popularity, which I hope that it does, because I like to have more competition with Windows. If SteamOS gains popularity, hopefully this kind of thing will be an issue in the past and it won't be an issue anymore. But as it stands right now, people who paid for Doom: The Dark Ages are unable to play the thing that they spent their money on because of bullshit DRM. And that is just unacceptable. So what do you guys think? Let me know in the comments section down below. And if it's your first time here, please subscribe. From the Nerd Nest, I'm Bill. Stay rad, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.